Welcome back, everybody. In this week's video, I'm going to be looking at the question, what is Reiki? Now, for those of you who are not new to my channel, for those of you who have subscribed and who have seen me in my previous videos, thank you very much for your support of the channel, by the way. You might have seen me kind of dance around this topic and answer this question here and there throughout a lot of my videos. If you're brand new to the channel, please have a look through, and I'm very grateful for your subscription as well, and I hope that these videos help you on your practice. And in this video, diving into that question of what is Reiki, maybe we can dispel some kind of common myths and beliefs and thoughts around the practice. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to look at this topic from two different perspectives, right? So my background in my practice is Usui Reiki Ryoho, which is the Japanese practice of Reiki as first taught by Usui Sensei. So I'm going to be using that as the base, and I'm going to be comparing the other practices of Reiki to the base, right? So first and foremost, what is Reiki in a whole? Well, from a Japanese perspective, it is a practice of healing via placing the hands over the body, either yours or somebody else's. And it's working as a healing modality because we are trying to cultivate an understanding of letting go, right? This is a big, big, big myth in the practice of Reiki, where people quite often are stating that Reiki is a healing modality and that somehow we can channel energy from ourselves to somebody else and we can open them up and heal them and, kind of balance their chakras and all these types of things that we simply can't do. Full stop. There's no way to do that, right? If that's how healing actually worked, then that's all we would do. And I know some people might find that to be a little bit shocking or a little bit too aggressive on the practice of Reiki. And actually, it's none of those things. It's actually what Reiki really is. Reiki is not just a healing modality. It's something beyond that, right? And if we don't see beyond the idea of it being a modality of healing, then we miss the core concept of Usui Reiki Ryoho, right? And we can find that meaning in its full name, which is Shinshin Kaizen Usui Reiki Ryoho. And that stands for the mind-body improvement method that was first taught to us by Usui Sensei. So here we can start to see this idea of something deeper than healing, the mind-body improvement method, right? So notice that we put the mind first because the mind is where all our attachments lie. So if we can't improve the mind, which in reality means to let it be quiet, let it be still of all its attachments and stories and beliefs and so on, then we can never allow the rest of the body to be neutral or to go into a state of rest, right? Our bodies heal naturally. They heal by themselves. We do this every single night when we go to sleep. We don't need belief in an external practice to stimulate the body's own activity of healing. Our body craves stasis or balance, right? And dis-ease, sickness, is literally that. You are out of ease or you are out of balance. And so what we're trying to do is to calm down the mind where all of our stories lie, all of our attachments and so on, right? The mind-body improvement method that was first brought to us by Usui Sensei. Healing is a byproduct of that. And so what we're doing is we're constantly working on the self to help quiet down those stories, to help quiet down the mind so that we can get our bodies and our minds back into a state where they are improved, which means back to their natural state of stasis or balance. And so this is a really beautiful angle to take with the practice, because if we focus the idea of Reiki as a healing modality, then we're missing the point. We're staying active in the mind, right? We're staying active in the belief that we can somehow do something for ourselves or others. We don't need to do anything to heal. It's the natural state of our body. Again, we do it every single night when we sleep, right? We go to bed and we wake up, hopefully after a good night's sleep, feeling better. That's what Reiki aims to simulate in our waking experience. So instead of being deep asleep at night, you can kind of mimic that experience or get similar benefits by practicing Usui Reiki Ryoho, right? And one of the key characteristics of this practice is the idea of letting go of the practice, letting go of the idea of Reiki, letting go of the stories, letting go of the channeling, of the feeling in the hands, and so on. All of that stuff is framed in the mind, okay? This is what Usui Sensei was originally teaching. It's the idea that at some point on your journey, your own spiritual journey, right? Wherever you are, it doesn't make any difference, but at some point on that journey, you will have to let go. You'll have to let go of the self. You'll have to let go of the mind. You'll have to let go of the experience that you believe that you are trapped in. Because you're not trapped at all. You're actually free. And that's what we have to recognize when we're practicing Reiki, the mind-body improvement method of Usui Reiki Ryoho. Shin Shin Kaizen, Usui Reiki Ryoho, right? Now, this is a really beautiful characteristic to keep as the aim of our practice. It doesn't mean that you are practicing Usui Reiki Ryoho like I teach and practice every day. It doesn't mean that you simply sit in the practice and your mind and your body are just instantly quiet. I wish they were. I wish it was that easy. It's not. We have to cycle through all the time, all of the delusions of the mind, the attachments, the channeling, the angels, all of the things that we think we can do. We have to let go of those things so that we can actually get into what is the core component of Usui Reiki Ryoho, which is letting go, right? So from a Japanese perspective, that's what Reiki is. It's a practice that helps us to cultivate a mind and body that is still and at peace. That's it. That's it, right? If we look at the components of Usui Reiki Ryoho, we start to see the practices that are asked of us every day, which is the daily recitation of the precepts, right, at morning and at evening, and also our hands-on healing, right, practice that we do every day for as long as we can, right? We need to do that honestly, and also the attunement process. So these are the core components of the practice. Notice that it has nothing to do with healing. It has nothing to do with other clients. It has nothing to do about anything external to the self because we are focusing on improving the mind and then the body. If the mind's at rest, the body will heal, right? So full stop. Everything else in Usui Reiki Ryoho is about letting go of all of the attachments. So when those attachments come up, we have tools and meditations and symbols and breath work and all of these different practices that we learn through the understanding of the levels of Usui Reiki Ryoho to help us cultivate a calm mind and a peaceful body. So when we talk about what is Reiki, quite often the conversation is misled, right? We can't do anything to help our bodies heal if our mind is in the way, if we're stuck on the story, right? We might feel better. We might have a practice that makes us feel a little bit better and so on, but that's still going to be a dead end. Still not going to help because we need to get out of the way fully, okay? So then what is Reiki from an external practice? Now, Reiki has now become this kind of umbrella topic or an umbrella practice. Or you can hear Reiki attached to all number of things: shamanic Reiki, Akashic record Reiki, money Reiki, gold Reiki, rainbow Reiki, Karuna Reiki, Tibetan Reiki. Like I've made videos on this before. To me, none of those are honest because we're not practicing Reiki, right? It's not that they're bad practices. It's that they don't have any right to use the term Reiki because Reiki is specifically attached to a practice of meditation and healing that is described by Usui Sensei. So we can't take the things that he's teaching, change them because we have beliefs about our own practice, and then package that as Reiki. It's not Reiki, right? We can call it hands-on healing. We can call it energy healing. We can call it anything we want because those practices are probably valid in their own merit, and they're probably helping people relax. They're probably helping people turn in and find stillness, but to call it Reiki is not correct. It would be like practicing a form of yoga. Like I'm an Ashtanga yogi, right? I'm an Ashtanga teacher, and I also teach yin yoga as well. Those are very specific practices, right? So if I was doing stretching before a big run or something like that, I wouldn't call that yoga because it's not a practice of yoga. I'm stretching right before I go running. But yoga is a form of stretching, but it's a specific sequence and a specific practice. And thus it falls under the term yoga, right? Because it has something bigger than the name itself. Reiki is something bigger than the name itself because it alludes to the teachings of Usui Sensei, and it alludes to his experience on Mount Karama, all of which encourage us to let go of the selves, right? So when we have these kind of other practices of Reiki, this is where you start to find the expression of like the answer to the question anyways of what is Reiki. This is where it becomes a lot more centered on doing. So like, well, it's a practice, you might hear things like this. Well, it's a practice where I, as the Reiki practitioner or the Reiki master, am able to place my hands on you and move your energy or balance it or balance your chakras or call in angels or do all these types of things. All of that, though, is framed in mind. This is a reoccurring topic on my channel, and I think it needs to be, right? Because we constantly get diluted by the beliefs of the mind, okay? So if we think about Reiki from this idea of healing, then we're automatically locked in the idea of duality. We're automatically locked in the idea that there is this or that, okay? So if we're practicing something for healing, well, then that implies that we must be sick. Now, all of us, of course, have things we can heal from, right? All of us have struggles that we're going through, attachments in the mind, attachments in the body, and so on. But those are all still framed in the mind. So if we stay stuck on fixating on these things that we're trying to work through, then we're actually just attaching to them, right? So even if we call Reiki a healing modality, this is missing the point. We can't heal if we stay attached to it, right? Something I say quite often in my classes to people is like, I currently don't have COVID. For instance, I hope I don't have COVID. I don't think I do. I'm pretty sure I don't. So because I don't have it, it wouldn't make any sense for me to say that I practice something that I'm working to keep myself free of COVID, right? Now you can say, but we all have to heal. We're healing from a million things all at the same time. That's true, right? It's not just one idea like, I don't have COVID, so I don't have to think about that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is all the idea of healing resides in the mind because all the idea or the attachments and illnesses reside in the mind, even if you are sick, right? The body will do its best to heal if we get the mind out of the way. Shin Shin Kaizen, Usui Reiki Ryoho, the mind-body improvement. We work to heal, relax, and rest the mind first. And so what do I mean by heal? In that sense, the whole point is neutrality, right? A neutral mind begats a neutral body, which begats healing, okay? Because we are returning to stasis. So then where did all these kind of new discussions on Reiki and all of this other like external noise come into the practice? Well, here's some things that might help us understand that, right? So in the history of Reiki, there is an individual named Takada Sensei, who I'll picture here. And she was one of the students of one of the initial students of Usui Sensei. So her lineage goes Usui Sensei, Hayashi Sensei, Takada Sensei. Okay, so only one teacher removed from Usui Sensei. And we owe the entire continuation in many ways of the practice of Reiki to Takada Sensei because she brought it from Japan into the United States, into Hawaii, at a time that it was very, very precarious to do so. We had a very pro-Christian mentality, so we were not a culture that was open to these kind of external discussions, right? So here you have a woman and a Japanese woman who is coming in and trying to teach about this healing method that was brought to us by a monk in Japan into a culture that was not happy or open to talk about any of these things. What a courageous thing she did, right? And bless Takada Sensei for this because it's incredible what she did, the courage that she had to bring this story to the West where it could find its roots while the East, in Japan in particular, started to go through its World War II level of authoritarianism, anti-religion, dictatorships, and these types of things. It was a fascist country, an Axis country after all. So all of these practices were banned, right, in that time. So in many ways, the only way that Reiki survived was by it moving out to the West, to the United States. But in order to do that, she had to add things to the story. She had to make Mike Usui's journey look more Western. So she's incorporating things like the chakras, making him look like he was a Christian, talking about Reiki as this ability to channel Jesus, saying that Usui Sensei had studied at the University of Chicago, that he had received his the ability to be a clergy, like he was a priest and a Catholic priest. All of that is false, right? None of that stuff is legitimate. Also saying that he was a doctor, like a traveling doctor. None of that is true at all. And there's plenty of documentation to show that none of that is true. But we still teach it, right? Many of you, if you're seeing this video for the first time from my channel, and you are maybe just taking your Reiki level 1, I would bet, especially if you're in the States, that in that manual, it's probably saying that Usui Sensei was a doctor, that he trained at University of Chicago. Literally everything that I've just said is probably in your manual. And we have to wonder, why is that the case? This is the case because teachers just regurgitate what they've heard from their teacher, and they're not diving further into the practice, right? And so because of this, because of all of these other experiences that were brought in, the idea of kind of mending or molding Reiki to other modalities and so on, we start to get away from the core fundamental root of the practice. And the further away we get from the root, which is Shin Kaizen, Usui Reiki Ryoho, the mind-body improvement, right? The more we get away from the idea that we need to improve the mind first, right? The more we get away from that, then the more seduced we become by our experience in the practice. Absolutely, it's not a criticism of anyone who has things like channeling or feeling things during sessions, hearing voices, seeing colors, seeing the chakras, seeing angels, seeing deities, seeing Mikao Usui or all of the deities of Mount Krama or whatever. That happens all the time, right? But we have to recognize that those are all in the mind. Even if you think you're downloading it, it's still in your mind, and we have to work to let the mind go, right? Because what happens if we don't let that go, we then end up with all of these other branches of Reiki where they claim to say things like, well, I downloaded all of this, and now I've made a new branch of Reiki, and it's this much more powerful. And I say this all the time on the channel because we need to be careful to not fall into those traps, right? And from that camp, from the camp of kind of the Western approach to Reiki, this is how the story becomes. When somebody might ask a Western practitioner, what is Reiki? Well, it's a healing method that was first brought to us by Usui Sensei, but my version of Reiki is something that I channeled and has these symbols that you can find nowhere else, and it's this much more powerful, and I can heal this, and I can do all these types of things. That's just simply not true. It's not true, right? So then people might ask, well, then why do you practice Usui Reiki Ryoho? Isn't that what, if you ask an Eastern practitioner, a practitioner of Usui Reiki Ryoho, what is Reiki? They might say the same thing, but that's not an honest answer, right? Reiki is a fundamental practice to help cultivate a still mind. That's it, right? And that, to me, has nothing to do with Usui Sensei, the Japanese roots of Reiki. It's got nothing to do with my teachers. It's got nothing to do with anything that I've learned, yet it has everything to do with them, right? Because from that lineage coming straight out of Japan, which is what I teach, it has encouraged me to find the path forward without the attachment of the mind, right? Go into the self and work to quiet down and soften our attachments. That's a key differentiator, okay? And so it's okay to think that Reiki is a healing modality if we take it one step further. If we take it further to the idea that not only is it a healing modality, but if I can let go of that and cultivate a still mind, well, then I'm going to heal by definition, by default, because the body's just going to do it, right? And see, in that space, I don't need all of these new lineages and branches and beliefs and practices. I don't need any of that stuff. I don't need to hear what new system of Reiki is out here, or how it does this or how it does that, because everything is framed in the mind, okay? And regardless of how many iterations or new lines of practice there are within the Reiki world, none of those are actually Reiki, because the only thing that can call itself Reiki is Usui Reiki Ryoho, because that's where it came from. That's the root, right? So there needs to be a level of honesty in these responses, right? When you come into the practice and you come into maybe a new teacher, or if you're going to learn Reiki or whatever, make sure you're learning it from its roots. Just like everything else in life, you want to learn something, learn it correctly, not from the belief of everybody else. You want to go back as close as you can to the roots. The roots of Reiki are all about letting go of the practice of Reiki. Shin, Shin, Kaizen, Usui Reiki Ryoho, right? So when we're approached with this question of what is Reiki, there's so many different ways out there that this could be answered, right? And indeed, we see that. I hope I've covered a lot of them here in this video. Its core practice is simple. We need to let go. We need to surrender the belief of the practice, right? And we need to do that because we're human, or at least I can speak for myself, because I'm human and because I live in the world of duality, because I live in the duality of my mind and the attachment to suffering and so on, I have to cycle through that over and over and over and over and over again, right? All the time, daily, hourly, minute by minute sometimes. My mind comes up with stories and beliefs and all these types of things, right? If I stay there, I can never let go. If we stay in the mind, we constantly attach to the stories that we think we're healing by this practice that you think is called Reiki, right? Seek out a practice that encourages you to let go of the practice, because in letting go of the practice, you let go of the mind. And by letting go of the mind, you actually release the stories that are entrapping you in your own suffering and causing you to feel sick, right? So there's a huge difference here in the way that we can answer the question of what is Reiki, right? Find a teacher or find a practice that encourages you to slowly but assuredly let go of the practice. This is how we heal, and this is how we honor what Reiki really is, which is Usui Reiki Ryoho, right? As always, thank you so much for the support of the channel, everybody. I hope you found it beneficial to your practice. Be well, and In Gassho to all.